Welcome, everybody. I'm joined here. Uh, my morning is evening, afternoon, I'm assuming.
Yes, evening here. It's 10:20 or so in the evening, Saturday night. So, yep.
Well, the reason I brought you on here is because of the letter that Stephen wrote for us that Sandy
Yes,
posted on a lot of Facebook groups. I just wanted to get
yes,
your thoughts because I consider you probably one of the closest people now to Stephen after his mom died. He's got Alan, he's got Sandy, he's got you that he communicates with. I don't know who else he talks to, but I know that's those three are a fact.
yep, that's right. He does talk to some other people, but Sandy is probably the number one person he speaks with and speaks to me quite regularly. So I pretty much not know what's going through his mind. Would you like me to comment upon my thoughts about the letter? Is that what would you like me to do? Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I kind of break it up into two areas, maybe even three, to be honest. Um, but I think I need to set the scene for this letter because it's a letter that, in many ways, is controversial and but in many ways is understandable. Um, Stephen has been in prison 34 years, wrongfully convicted. It's very difficult for any of us to place ourselves in the position of being judging his activities and his thoughts and his processes unless we've walked in his shoes. So when I first read the letter, and just by the way, I didn't know that letter was coming, so it was just as surprising to me as it was to any of the supporters. I suspect Sandy probably knew something was coming, but I didn't. But my first reaction to the letter was, I don't know that I would write that. But at the same time, I totally understood the frustration from it and what would have given rise to his need to write it. And in many ways, if you think about both Stephen and Brendan, but particularly Stephen, has been travelling a long and slow road to get to a point where he's still looking for his day of freedom. So his actions and reactions and the way he writes things, to me, is totally understandable. But I would also like to talk about the letter itself, if I may, just in terms of its content, because I really break it into two camps. There are elements of the letter that talk about, let's call it Stephen's theory about the disappearance and murder of Teresa Halbach. There's that camp. And then there's the camp of commentary about his family members. Okay, so I think I will deal with the first element. Sorry about the dog, by the way. I don't know if you can hear a dog barking. But in terms of the group that in Stephen's sights and his theory, I believe much of what Stephen says is valid, factually valid. So I think the basis for why he's stating what he says is not without solid foundation, and certainly not without reasonable foundation to put that forward. So let's just talk about that for a moment. So you would know, Billy, just as I do, and most people do, is that there are many people that were not properly and independently investigated in the Stephen Avery Brendan Dassey trials. The whole effort of law enforcement went towards convicting Stephen Avery, not towards finding the truth. And we know who those people are. They're people like Bobby Dassey, people like Ryan Hilligas, people like Scott Blowdorn, probably the Zipperers, and a few others, right?
Martinez.
Yeah. And I mention their names not to say they're guilty, but to say they weren't thoroughly investigated. And I believe within that group of people there lies many answers that would, if known publicly, known in the sense of on the record, legally,
Well, I'd like
would
to
see
talk.
Stephen be free.
One of the main people that jumped out at me in that letter was Bobby Dassey's friend. Now, if you read
Yes.
the case reports and you listen to the audio that we have them running Bobby Dassey's name. They spell it wrong, Dassee. And along with that, they also run Dwayne Osmond's name, which
Yes.
is Mike Osmondson's father.
Yeah.
And we have law enforcement contacting his mother, stating that they had learned that their son, one of their sons, was on the property during that time frame.
Yes.
Well, after they talked to Mike, you read the case report. He claims that he was there, but it was on the 10th of November. Now, what's wrong with that?
It's a question for me. You're asking.
Yes.
It counters the argument put by the prosecution.
Well, Stephen Avery is arrested on the 9th.
Correct.
The whole property is still locked down until the 12th.
Yes.
How is Michael Osmondson having this conversation with Stephen Avery on a day he couldn't have? And why did the cops ignore it?
Well, herein lies the basic flaw in lots of things that we contemplate in these cases, and that is we assume rational behaviour and at worst incompetence. We don't assume, and when we ask those questions, corruption. So the answer to your question lies in the word corruption. It doesn't lie in any other type of explanation. So the issue for me, if I could, in terms of Stephen's letter, is if we take those group of people that I mentioned, including Mike Osmondson, they should have been, as we know, properly investigated. Now, the fact that they weren't, and we're long past the trial and long past some of the early aspects of the appeals, some of those people get a little ticked off that their name keeps coming up, right? So my view about that is this simple. I mean, I wouldn't want to be named. If someone said, oh, I think Mark Hoddenot is someone who should be named, that'd be not much fun, right? But what I would do is I say, hey, I've got nothing to do with this. I'm going to go and see, go and see Kathleen Zellner and let her ask me 1,000 questions, whatever she wants, obviously with an attorney present so he doesn't, do the wrong thing by himself. Not that Kathleen Zellner is anything other than a private lawyer. She's not law enforcement. But if they're so concerned about the reputational damage that having these people named might have on them, well, just clear your name. Go and talk to Kathleen Zellner. She only wants to find the real killer. She doesn't want to convict someone who didn't do it. So go and see her and get your name cleared. It's really that simple, and all this grief goes away, at least in terms of the individual people who are being named. But what do we find, however? That all these people that we're talking about avoid Kathleen Zellner and Stephen's side of the story, and Brendan's. They don't come forward. So that has to be a bit of a red flag, because to me it's what's the downside of coming forward? None. The upside is you get this matter resolved once and for all and your name's cleared.
Well, that's like Stephen mentioned that phone call you recorded. He's got way more than one Brady violation, and they're still not doing what they should do. Give him a new trial.
Well, that's right. He deserves that. I mean, and here we go back to this point about that rational discussion and normal judicial behaviour should result in Stephen easily having a new trial, but corruption stops that. That's basically what it is. So all the normal norms of behaviour that would entitle Stephen or anyone in that like circumstance to get proper justice through a new trial is denied him or thwarted to him because of the implications for the behaviour of people who got him there in the first place. So the other, and I'll come back to this broadly in a moment, but if I could just quickly go to the other side of Stephen's letter, and that is he's very open and directly names pretty much everyone in the family, siblings and nieces and nephews and who knows what. And much of what he talks about is about, in Stephen's view, a lack of support for him and that he feels abandoned by him. I don't generally propose to go into a public discussion about that, but Stephen's, that's a very personal family matter, and I don't think it's appropriate to be in Stephen's letter. Although I totally again understand it because of
Well,
his
you can tell
frustration.
he's frustrated. I would be.
Yeah.
We all. If
He
anybody
would
was
be.
in his shoes, how would you react? Being
Exactly.
where he's been his whole life.
Yeah. But his statements in the letter about his family, without going into them, have foundation at some reasonable level. But beyond that, I don't really want to comment on it because it is a personal thing. But he has a good basis for the things that he says, and he has foundation for the things he's in part at least that he says about family. Does he have ironclad, verifiable proof? That's always difficult when you're trying to deal with this from a prison cell. So, to summarise those two elements, my view is that the letter was understandable, probably equally unfortunate in a sense, particularly in terms of the references to some family members without substantiation. As we say, none of us would like to be in that position. But he's been in prison wrongfully convicted for 34 years, for God's sake, and Brendan for 16 years. He's fighting for himself. He's fighting for his life. And we've never been in that position personally. And so, as much as many people would probably wish he hadn't sent that letter, I totally understand why he did. And if he had asked my advice about it ahead of time, which he didn't, I would have cautioned him. I might have suggested he do it slightly differently, but I don't know. He's his own man. I'm just someone who, like you, who cares about him and who cares about justice. So, but the bottom line, Millbilly, is, he's got to he's got to have as many rolls of the dice as he can, because he's the one in prison, and Brendan. They're the ones in prison having their lives taken away from them. So I think we need to be a little understanding, even if it mightn't be what we would do personally. Yeah.
I agree, 100%. Everything you said.
And I would love. I know. If any of those people have a bitch about being mentioned in Stephen's letter. Well, and Stephen's not really, in terms of the key suspects, if I can call it that, alternate suspects. I'm not saying the murderers, but key alternate suspects. If any of them have got a bitch about being mentioned, go and talk to Kathleen Zellner. She doesn't want to convict you unless you did it, right? So if you didn't do it, and that's the imputation that they didn't do it, because we always hear that, no, we didn't do it. So if you didn't, okay, that's good. No one wants to add any more pain to this. Go to Kathleen Zellner, have a proper sit-down interview with a representative on the record.
Bobby Dassey had no problem talking to the cops again in 2017, and they actually asked Barb permission to talk to him, and he was an adult.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. So that was just, in my view. I mean, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I have no doubt that Bobby, with due respect to him, this doesn't make him the killer, by the way. I no doubt Bobby didn't tell the truth when he was on the stand in Stephen's trial. I have no doubt about that at all. So then the remaining question is, why didn't he tell the truth?
Why didn't he tell the truth? Why was he persuaded to say what he said?
Correct.
Well, everybody was told what to say because Kraft says it in one of his press conferences.
Yeah. So Bobby has to be held accountable. Why Mike Osmondson wasn't brought to trial as a witness? That's another issue for me. But he knows a lot more. Mike Osmondson is like this player in the system that has never really been brought to account in any way. If he doesn't like his name being mentioned, if he doesn't like to be associated with the allegations, and they are only allegations with Bobby, well then just come out, put the facts on the record, and the matter goes away. A bit like Josh Redant did, right? Josh Redant made himself available to Kathleen Zellner, and Kathleen Zellner came to the view that he was no longer a person of interest from her point of view. So, and he would have done that because I would assume he would have done that because he thought, hey, I didn't do anything here, I'm going to just clear my name. So, and that's what all the others should do. Ryan Hilligas is another. He knows a lot more. He's been involved in this at a quite intimate level, both before Teresa's vehicle was found and significantly afterwards. He needs to be on the record about all of that. So, and clear his name, get him out of the way.
You got nothing to hide. Oh.
Exactly. And as I said, that Stephen's letter, love it or hate it or whatever, he has significant foundation to the matters he raises in it. They're not frivolous things that he's saying that are just the words of an angry man. They're the words that are built upon a significant foundation for the things he alleges. And
he's had 16 years to sit and think about this every single day.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we need, as much as it might annoy some people, we need to give Stephen a bit of slack here, because we can't be, unless we put ourselves in his shoes, and we can't do that, nor do we want to. We can't know how he's feeling. So that's the way I see it. Undoubtedly, I'll get to talk to him sometime in the next couple of days, and I'll talk to him about the letter, but that's just my views about it.
Well, thank you for saying what you said. Yeah. I know when I seen the letter, I was shocked.
Yeah, it was a pretty in-your-face letter, but
yeah,
it's fairly, I mean, just as a piece of letter writing, it exhibits a careful consideration. It mightn't be the exact words you or I might choose, or we might rephrase it a little differently, or to express it in other ways, but it's clear that he's thought very clearly about what he's written.
Well, like I said, at the end of me reading that letter, me and Stephen are on the same page. Yeah. I know why he thinks what he's thinking and why he's inquiring about what he's inquiring about, because I'm inquiring about the same things too.
Yeah. And Stephen, I can tell you and everyone, Stephen is not inclined to irrational behavior. That's not his way of processing information. He wants to look at facts, he wants to analyze them, he wants to pull the pieces together and come to a view. That's how he thinks. He's always been like that. Ever since I've known him, I'm sure that he's been that way all his life. So he's not someone who's had a Friday night kind of mad moment and decided to put pen to paper. This would have been well thought through for him, right? So he's a guy 34 years into this wrongfully convicted sentences. He deserves the right to put his opinion forward. He's the one suffering, and that's what he's done. So, and for those who feel aggrieved by it, go and have a chat to Kathleen Zellner and the matter will go away. That's the way I see it.
Well, thank you for coming on, and
my pleasure.
I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yep, we'll have more to say in due course for sure, and thanks very much for inviting me on, Billy.
All right, y'all have a good day, and see you next time.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.